in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down. Everybody, most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
Breaking news, the Delta jet crashing at the Toronto airport. The remarkable images, the flight out of Minneapolis crashing and flipping upside down while landing at Toronto Pearson Airport. Take a look at the images tonight showing the Delta plane upside down right there. Its landing gear you can see pointing to the sky. Passengers then recording what they saw just moments after they made their escape from the plane. They're on the tarmac right here, obviously looking back at the plane upside down and seeing what they just survived. Firefighters racing to hose it down. 80 passengers and crew on board. They had to unbuckle their seatbelts while hanging upside down. Tonight, the remarkable news, everyone survived this. But there is word at this hour, at least 15 people are hurt, including a child. At least 3 people in critical condition, including that child tonight. This evening, investigators already on the scene. You can see the engine on the plane still, but both wings are gone. The right wing torn off completely. And what our own aviation expert, pilot Steve Ganyard, said about that got our attention tonight. Why that wing coming off might have saved some of the passengers on this plane. Tonight, the FAA and the NTSB sending teams to Toronto. And of course, the key question at this hour was weather a factor. There was snow and ice and the winds. Reports of gusts up to 40 miles per hour. And this was a regional jet that might have been trying to land in these winds. ABC's Gio Benitez covers aviation, and he leads us off with the images coming in tonight.
Tonight, these dramatic images show a Delta plane flipped upside down, smoke pouring out of the fuselage, the plane crash landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Passenger John Nelson shooting this video moments after the crash.
In Toronto, we just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site.
The Delta Regional CRJ-900, operated by Endeavour Air, traveling from Minneapolis-St. Paul with 80 people on board, arriving in Toronto around 2:30 p.m.
We just had a crash on runway 23 here.
Emergency crews racing to the scene. 17 people transported to area hospitals, a pediatric patient, a man in his 60s, and a woman in her 40s critically injured. Remarkably, no one killed.
When it came to a halt, everybody is upside down. So there are going to be injuries just getting the seatbelts out, falling to the ceiling, and getting out that way.
Passengers seen escaping the aircraft.
Most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
Just so you are, there's people outside walking around the aircraft there.
Yeah, we've got it. The aircraft's there's upside down and burning.
Ron James witnessing the smoke from inside the airport.
Seen a bunch of smoke, and then I've seen some fire trucks go, and then I seen a trolley carrying a helicopter, and wondered what was going on. And I got to the door of my plane, and they just said, we're not going anywhere.
Fire damage seen along the back of the plane. The airport shut down for hours. And there are already questions about how winds and wintry weather may have impacted the crash. The tarmac blanketed with snow. Winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour around the time of landing. And it comes just weeks after 67 people were killed in that horrific crash over the Potomac between a Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines plane. And that medical jet crash in Philadelphia that killed 6 people on board and 1 person on the ground. While back in Toronto tonight, this major investigation is now underway.
These 2 runways will remain closed while the investigation takes place. We are very grateful that there was no loss of life and relatively minor injuries.
And David, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be leading this investigation. The American FAA and NTSB are sending crews to Toronto. But again, David, I've got to go back to the biggest headline of all here, that everyone on board survived, and that is simply a miracle.
18 passengers were injured. Some have critical injuries after a Delta flight overturned while landing in Toronto, Canada. Good evening. I'm Steve Eager.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes. So that flight was from Minneapolis going to Toronto. It had 80 people on board. Miraculously, initial reports say no fatalities. Fox 4's Sean Rabb has been following the breaking news and joins us now. Sean.
Yeah, and that is the amazing news today. Again, 18 people have been transported to Toronto area hospitals. Lots of concern about those who are hurt right now in this, the 4th aviation accident in the last month. But this was a crash people walked away from. Let's take a live look now at the Pearson Airport there in Toronto. You see emergency vehicles, the plane inverted, upside down, resting on the tarmac. There's still some emergency personnel there around that Delta jet, but we never saw lots of flames, and that's, you know, part of the blessing in all of this. This plane is a CRJ-900. It's operated by Endeavour Air for Delta Airlines. It's the biggest of the CRJ models. The fuselage in the center of your screen screen there. One wing is sheared off. Now, lots of snow and ice on the ground, 18 degrees, but good visibility when the plane was coming in for a landing, but strong winds as the plane made its hard landing. We talked with pilot and aviation attorney Ron McCallum, who says this could have been a horrific accident.
Here's the best thing that I can see from a fellow aviator. When the pilot tells you to put on your seatbelts, they mean it, and they're there for a reason. If people were unbelted with that aircraft going on its back in such a form, there would be so many more injuries that would be completely avoidable. But it seems like everybody paid attention on this one, including the crew.
Well, those passengers who we saw walking away will certainly have a story to tell when we're able to hear from them. Clearly, the environment, in this case, the wind, gusting to 35 knots, about 40 miles an hour when the plane made final approach to land, will be a big focus of investigators, along with the aircraft itself and, of course, the pilots.